and we are live for another Biddle on Saturday night.
Hi, everyone.
How's everybody doing?
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
Doing great, doing great.
We got a full house already, which is awesome. I love it. And we have KDE Neon this week for the challenge. So who wants to go? Look, last week we didn't do Solus Budgie or Budgie itself. We didn't do it like justice, or nobody had a good experience with it. So let's start on a high note. Who had a good experience with KDE Neon?
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
There it is.
Yep.
Do it.
Yep.
Guess what the memory usage is on first boot on that thing?
What is it?
I've actually got it up on the screen. 379 meg.
Wow.
Nice. That's good. That's real good.
Oh my
A
gosh.
couple of years ago, what would that have been on KDE? It's amazing.
Oh yeah, yeah. Double or triple that.
No problems at all. It works flawlessly. It's on a ThinkPad 220, so it's about a 6-year-old ThinkPad.
Nice.
That's really sweet.
If I mute you, one of you guys at a time, I'm trying to figure out who has the background noise. Somebody has the background noise in the stream.
It's a weird, spooky noise, and something's talking.
I'm always talking. That's my secret, Captain.
Yeah, Frank, that was in your background, I believe. So anyway, okay, so let's move on. You said 308. What did you say? 300 what?
379, I think it was.
379. So
on boot.
what'd you like about it? What didn't you like about it?
It boots extremely fast. I mean, from actually hitting the start button, or the power button, you're on in about 15 to 20 seconds on a 6-year-old dual-core i5 machine. Everything works almost in the same way as Kubuntu works out of the box. For what is technically still a beta, no issues at all. Absolutely great. No screen tearing, no issues. I mean, admittedly, it's Intel, so it's not NVIDIA on that laptop. But everything's smooth, no problems at all. I've thought for a long time that when I eventually stop distro hopping, it will be KDE of some description that I end up using. It could well be Neon if that's anything to go by.
Nice.
It's really, really nice.
All right, Dan, you had a good experience?
Oh, absolutely. I've got a similar spec machine that Rob does. And I've got the YouTube. I'm just looking at the chat over here, and so I've got YouTube going, and I'm at 1.4 gig of memory usage, so that's not a lot considering the stream is running over there. That seemed really good, actually, and it's very fast. And it's nice because you start off building the system the way you want. You have a clean slate. You can install whatever, you don't have a whole bunch of bloated stuff that you're never going to use. It's not sitting there just, cluttering up, your space. Everything is snappy, really fast. It's just a wonderful experience, and plus you have all the Ubuntu, repos. So, software, whatever you want, it's just fantastic.
I totally agree. Chicken?
I mean, similar experiences here. The resource usage was incredibly low, and to kind of just repeat what Rob said, the boot up times were really incredible. I mean, sometimes on desktops with really wacky configs, boot up can take forever for some weird reason, despite the powerful hardware. And this was honestly 6 seconds. So really impressive over all of the other experiences I've had, and incredibly stable. I haven't had any crashes. So, he's laughing. What's happening?
Nothing. TZ starting the train. All right. Did anybody have any trouble installing it?
None at all.
No, actually, I installed it alongside Solus Budgie because I had that on there. So I was like, whatever. I installed it alongside. Still good. The grub menu looks like it's from 1980, but it works.
I had a couple of issues with the install. I only had one thing installed on my system at the time, and when I went to install it, the grub it just seemed to like eat the other entries despite having its own separate bootloader, and that was really weird. It was very aggressive.
I figured out what the problem was because I had the same issues that I had last week, that it borked my peppermint install.
Yeah.
What it does is it's got to be Ubuntu, because last week it was Ubuntu Budgie. This time it's KDE Neon based on Ubuntu. It goes into the BIOS, whatever is the first hard drive that it finds with an EFI directory or EFI partition. That's where it puts the bootloader.
So even though it lets you set it tell it where to go, it just decides.
Yes, I told it to go to SDC, and it installed on SDA.
Oh, that would explain so many of my problems then.
Yep, it's something in the Ubuntu installer. But other than that, once I got it in and up and running, like everybody else, it's been a joy to be running.
It has been.
Just that install and dealing with the grub issue and where the grub gets installed. Other than that, it's been an absolute pleasure. I mean, I'm running it right now. This is what I'm in.
That's great.
And I'm still running it. So if that does you anything.
Yeah.
Matt, what'd you think? Nice time to freeze, Matt. Nice time to freeze.
Nice.
Start over, brother.
I was gonna say I enjoyed it. I thought the system resource usage was great. I think cold boot I'm around 400 megs, give or take. The fact that you have the Ubuntu base, it's stable, just surprisingly so for a preview or a beta, whatever you want to call it. My only issue is still Discover. I had 3 updates that just sat in Discover that refused to install.
I uninstalled Discover.
Oh no, I did one better. I ended up installing Synaptic.
There you go.
So Discover still got some work. As far as installing applications, though, Discover was actually really, really good. It's gotten a lot better than it used to be.
There's a software store?
Yeah, Discover.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I
You
live
can
in
call it that.
Yeah.
It's called Discover.
Yeah. But other than that, everything's been solid. Snaps work great. I have a bunch of them installed right now. It's probably going to stay on this machine, actually. Yes, I installed this on the weird hardware.
I was going to say, which one did you install on?
The Sony Vaio Duo.
And it handled it.
And everything worked. Actually, it worked better than straight Ubuntu or any of the derivatives so far that I've tried.
Nice.
Zeb?
Yeah, I'm running it. I was running it before we started the show, so it was not much of a challenge to me. I just had to continue to use it all week, and it's been silky smooth. Nothing wrong with it. Like Elementary, it's got a superb HIDPI solution. You can change it per monitor, which is very handy. But I've come to the conclusion that all HIDPI solutions are just a bit of a mockery, sorry, because I mean you can get exactly the same by just changing the native resolution on your monitor, because that's all the HIDPI settings do. So yeah,
I hate to burst the bubble there, but the issue with scaling the resolution is that one, you're using a different part of your GPU to handle the scaling. So then if you actually need that part of the GPU for other operations, they end up being slower. But also, like, it just doesn't look as good, which is, I know, is not important, but it looks cool.
Pixels out of place.
Pixels.
I mean, I must admit,
I definitely agree with you. It's a mess.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe I'm lucky, but these, I mean, now I'm on 1440 resolution on my 2.4Ks, and I'm not noticing any, it's not missing any pinpoint, because normally on these types of monitors, you get a recommended setting, and anything else you choose isn't
terrible
sharp. But looking at these two, maybe it's just I don't see as well as you guys, and I don't see that attention to detail. So for me, it's much easier than trying to mess about. But I get what you're saying, though, Chicken, that if I do change it to 1440 and I then watch a 4K video, I've got to change it back to 4K to watch it. Whereas if I just messed with the HIDPI settings, it would automatically be in 4K and it wouldn't scale it, I guess.
Right.
So maybe I should go back to 4K and just put up with the scaling. But Neon takes it perfectly.
1440p is pretty decent anyway. I mean, it's
yeah, and it matches the big monitor I've got in the middle, so it makes it look all nice and slick. But back to Neon itself, yeah, it just works. And I very rarely use software sensors. I always use the command line, so I don't know whether Discover's any good or not because I never click the little icon with the blue dot on it. As soon as I see that, I go into a terminal and do it that way.
Yeah.
Do you guys use the package kit like they recommend, or do you guys use apt?
I use apt.
Apt.
What's the other one they recommend?
They say use a package kit, which is PKCon. And so you do PKCon refresh, PKCon update.
I think the benefit is that it can do firmware updates now.
Yeah, they've been recommending it for a while on Neon. I'm not sure why. I was curious if anybody had any ill effects.
I have never used that.
Okay, curious.
All right, so
I tried to use it though because it was damn quick telling me that there was nothing to update. A lot quicker than apt upgrade.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what the difference is.
if Michael was here, he would tell you what the difference is.
Yeah, I do know that Package Kit is a universal package manager supposedly, and I think it's in Fedora as well. So I think the idea is you can take it and use it in any distribution.
Oh.
Has anyone noticed quirkiness with just KDE in general and like plugging in your phone?
No.
No.
No, I plugged it in. I plugged mine in and it worked perfectly.
I just for some reason always get this thing where I'd go to click it and I just get some weird error pop-ups, or like the camera application just doesn't like to import things.
Huh.
Me.
No.
Well, I'll tell you the weird things that I'm actually running KDE Neon right now. As with all challenges, I'll run it on the show if I can. But I think it looks great. I think it looks better than Windows 10. I reckon it looks better than Deepin. It's really polished. I just really think it looks excellent. Unlike some of the others, I use Discover because I do everything from a new user perspective. It's done all my updates. It installs things, no problem at all. It's actually, if you scroll right down to the bottom of the settings, it has the flat pack and the snap as well that you can hook up to Discover, and that's working quite okay as well. So I've had no issues in updating or installing anything with the Discover. It's working all right for me, so that's a positive from me, I suppose.
That's
and
good.
One little weird thing I did have is there's a sound app called Win7 sound app. Now, we've mentioned that before.
I have it on.
Yeah. Now, I had two of them on the panel. I don't know whether I added one after I installed it, but it must have automatically added one to the panel after install. And then I uninstalled it, and it's still there. I actually removed it, and it's still actually inside the system tray, which was really weird. So I don't know what that's all about. Yeah, it is bizarre. So, and I've restarted, and everything's still there. So that was a bit of a weird anomaly to me, but.
Unless it's just a notifier that's a separate program. So
the system tray
is even.
There's a system tray.
Even after the app is gone.
Yeah, well, you're right. It is in the system tray, and there was a widget. So the widget's gone, but the system tray's still there. But I would have thought that would have been hooked up to the widget, or is it different? I don't know.
Depends on how it's programmed.
Yeah, well, I've noticed and I've seen that people have been complaining about some of the issues with the system tray, and that it's just been really like fidgety lately. Sometimes you'll have notifications that either just don't go away, or there'll be like you'll go to click on something in the system tray, but it'll just bring you up to the normal drop down, and you can't specifically go into certain items. So it's possible that it could be KDE.
I thought you can click on things in the system tray, but you can't click on anything. So I don't know what's going on there. It seems you're right. There is something definitely a bit weird going on with that. That's the only thing I've noticed, and I have to right-click to go to updates. I thought you could click on updates inside the notifier, but it wasn't happening.
You're supposed to be able to. Yeah, I've seen people complain about that.
There's a bit of weirdness going on with the notifier there, definitely. Yeah, that's the only strange thing that I've noticed.
The good thing is it doesn't hang the entire desktop like I think it used to back in like 5.11-ish, I think.
Right.
I just clicked on the secretary icon and it brought up the update.
But I didn't make it.
Right.
I'm sorry, Frank. Go ahead.
I tried to be fancy. I was on KDE Neon when I logged in earlier, and I had the sound problem. That was the only problem I've ever accomplished with that thing. It's like beta for me.
Yeah, well, it is a beta, isn't it? So I suppose we should mention that, shouldn't we? Yeah.
Yep. The KDE sound system is definitely a quirky one.
Definitely.
It's got like if you somehow manage to take advantage of it, I mean, it's got quite a few control benefits, and it's got some nice. You can kind of split things off into different channels pretty easily, but if you're not doing that, it can be a little messy, and
it could be my laptop. I'm gonna have to say that because this is an older laptop. It's got some quirks to it, but I mean, it's got 8 gigs of RAM, and it operates everything else properly. So, oh well.
All right, Keegan, did you try Neon?
The whole week was crazy for me, so I really didn't have a chance to hardly get on the computer at all.
But you did have a chance to get a haircut. Just saying.
It was actually a late night behind the scenes kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
We're just really saying that elementary took up all of his time.
Why came to cut his hair? Why wasn't looking?
All right, Lamer just left. Well, look, I've been running Neon for the last couple days, week, more, something like that. So, as Zeb said, it was an easy challenge because this is probably the most stable KDE that I have had in over a year or two.
That's saying a lot.
That's saying a lot.
That's impressive.
Every single KDE version, distro, and I hate to say this, Chip, but Manjaro is in the same boat. Every single KDE version that I've tried has been up and down, bugs, crashes, just stupid stuff going on, sound issues, like you said, Chicken, with the sound apps. And this has been probably the most. Well, I'm going to say it is the most stable version of it. And don't ever update with Discover. Because, Matt, you said it right. Discover works great for applications. Like, if you will just want to install an app, it works great.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try to do updates.
I was going to say, personally, I think Discover's probably better from like an app store perspective than probably GNOME software is, honestly. But as far as updates, no, bad, terrible.
Well, that's what scares me the most about it, because they're talking about, this whole firmware upgrade thing, and that's going to be, from my understanding, it's going to be in Discover.
That's terrifying.
And that is a terrifying thing.
It is. I'm sorry, when I have to install a GTK app for my package manager in order to actually update my system from a user perspective, that's terrible.
Well, I hope you guys like bricks, because that's what we're going to be making.
I am not upgrading any firmware with anything near Discover. Sorry. No way.
Firmware updates are really tricky. I wouldn't trust it, at least not anytime in the near future, not until they nail just updates in general.
But what's the difference between that and using Cinnamon and their updater as well? I mean, they do all their firmware updates through their package manager as well. So what's the difference between that and doing it through Discover?
Theirs just works.
Exactly.
Well, okay. Well, mine worked. Mine actually worked. I haven't had any issues yet. So that's just a yet. Anyway.
I have seen improvements. I don't get me wrong. I definitely, as fun as it is to bash them, there have been a lot of improvements, but right now it's still hasn't leveled out, I think, for a lot of people to the point where they can just
Absolutely.
consistently click update and never have a problem with it.
Yeah.
Well,
it's obvious.
Let's go ahead.
I was just going to say, obviously, there are a few problems from what I'm hearing here anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you look at Discover from where it was even a few releases ago, where you could barely install applications, it has done a lot of improvements, and they deserve a lot of credit for that.
Oh, yeah.
But on the same note, they also deserve a little bit of criticism when things don't work.
Yeah. I've been the first to criticize Discover, and it's just terrible sometimes. But as of lately, if you're just using it to install a piece of software that you need, it's working really good right now. So
it's definitely better than it was. That's for sure. Yeah, it's come a long way. Come a long way.
Oh, definitely.
And I think having that type of application just in general available is a step in the right direction, because it's solving a problem that eventually we're going to have to address everywhere, and that's the whole sort of app store, software center of doing things. It's just a necessity to get nailed.
Zeb, you didn't crash, did you?
Just a quick tip, people: don't mess with your display settings during the middle of a live. Because if you buy a display,
that's why when Jackson was relying on
definitely
laptops,
it was just no, that's it. I'm not going to tweak anymore.
And do note that's probably not distro specific. That's probably just across the board.
Yeah, that's across the board.
I think I was recording one time, and I remember saying, "I'm just going to switch this right now, and we'll see how this works." Well, the video ended up being fine, but no, I was unable to use my machine until I restarted.
Right.
Oh, so you pulled the Derek when he tried upgrading to the SID repos with it.
You don't want to do it. You don't want to do that.
Well, remind me about that, Chip. After we're done with Neon, I do want to talk about Netrunner a little bit. So, yeah, I did try it this week. But who tried the different menus out in KDE? Because for me, the first thing I do when I get on KDE is change the default menu, because I'm not a big fan of that. So who tried out the other menus?
Me.
Yeah. And which one's your favorite?
Simple.
Application launcher.
Yeah.
Dashboard.
Tiled menu.
Tiled menu's nice.
I want to try dashboard. I still haven't done it. I don't know why.
Why haven't you done it, dude?
It's just...
Well, there really isn't much to dashboard. I mean, the only thing it's really got going for it is it's a full screen launcher.
Oh, God.
I mean, I love the full screen launcher idea, but if it was up to me, it would be set up completely different. I mean,
it's hard to execute, it seems.
There's a lot of wasted space on that full screen launcher.
Yeah, I'm not sure about their implementation. Yeah,
I've seen a lot of pictures, and I'm just like, you know, I could fly a plane right between those two applications there.
Well, then again, you could say the same thing about the GNOME application launcher too.
You can't fly a plane between those icons, dude. They're so big.
One of the icons take the well, no, I was talking about the wasted space on the tops and sides, but you know, same difference.
It's a Red Bull course.
Why do you want to fly a plane through your computer screen? But hey, go for it.
Right.
Maybe
no, but
a Mac truck.
Matt, we were talking about it before the stream started, I believe, about Home Run used to be the KDE full screen launcher in the 3.3 days, and that was so customizable. You could do pretty much anything with it. You could change everything about it, and it was really nice. And then they ported it to, I guess, 4 or 5, and it just lost all settings whatsoever. You pretty much have 0 set. You can change the keyboard shortcut to open the full screen launcher, but that's about it.
Oh.
Yeah, there's very little. I'm looking at the dashboard settings right now. There's very little you can change. It is literally the icon, show name only, or with the sort alphabetically, recently used, and show recent applications and documents. That's about it.
Yep.
Well, I know with the default menus that come with KDE, I'm a bit surprised. I mean, with all the tweaks that you have available in KDE Plasma, that the menus don't have hardly any tweaks. Now, I would like to add in the full screen menu, I'd like to add maybe to look at the panel when you open it up, or even add a clock. That would be my needs. You can't do little, because when I'm watching a YouTube video, sometimes I like to know what the time is. I just hit the Windows button, and your launcher pops up, and you can see your time or your panel or your time. I'd like to do something like that because I got used to that habit in GNOME or GNOME.
That's what I would do in GNOME as well. It was really cool.
Yeah, it is. It's a nice thing to be able to do because time gets away from you sometimes when you're on YouTube.
No,
I don't think they would ever.
Never got into that rabbit hole. No.
Yeah, no, I mean,
got into that rabbit hole.
I usually end up. I mean, I'll just be on the computer. I'll look outside and I see daylight, and I give up at that point.
I'm getting too old for that.
I actually installed Latte Dock, and I put widget stuff into that, and so one of them is a clock.
Yep.
Solves my problem.
I have good news for you guys, actually, and especially you, Rocco. Remember my good old complaints about Latte Dock?
Yeah.
They've been solved.
Nice.
Latte Dock is officially an actual dock and not just a task manager now.
It's
Yep.
quite nice. So Dan, oh sorry, Rocco.
Go ahead, Colin.
Just while it's on my mind, Dan, do you use the Latte Dock? You can set that for the Windows key as well, can you, or not? No.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
You can, yeah. Okay, nice.
It doesn't work
All
default,
right.
but you can set it. There is settings you can.
There is a
workaround to do it.
Okay, that might solve a few problems as well. Actually, that could be a.
KDE, there is a setting to do it.
There's a ton of
Well,
settings.
going back to that, Colin, you said about the menus not having options, but that I think has to do with the whole philosophy kind of shift. KDE used to have from 3.5 days to when they ported everything to 4 and 5 that they're kind of like they don't really have that same idea to give you every option out there. They just want you to give you something. And it's a shame because I think if it was up to me and if I was running KDE, I would try to emulate what GNOME is doing, or not maybe bit by bit, but at least have some type of the full screen launcher being a dashboard type thing where it's the center hub for everything you need to do.
Absolutely.
Whether that's change windows or, like you said, look at the clock or see what's open, launch your applications. I think that would be awesome if KDE would do that, but I don't think they're going to concentrate on that too much.
Is that do they control that, or is there someone third party who does the widgets, the default widgets for KDE? I'm not sure about that.
It just depends on who maintains which little bit, and overall they all kind of chip in and focus on these things.
Right.
Things are maintained by certain people.
But the widgets are all third party, most of the widgets, aren't they, I believe?
Yep.
The other ones, you grab down.
Yeah, I mean, but that third party is just basically developers in the community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but for me, and Chip mentioned it in the chat, I use the simple menu, which is a kind of like a quarter screen menu, and super nice. And the only reason that I didn't used to use it was because it had this weird bug, and again, like I said, this KDE version of Neon is like awesome because when I used to put the simple menu on, I would open it and the menu would actually appear on the other monitor. So it would be on this monitor, the icon, and I would hit it and it would open on that monitor. It was weird.
It's really strange.
But it doesn't do that now. And so that's what I use for the menu. But you guys had mentioned about Latte Dock, and I used to replace all of my panels with Latte Dock instances. And I stopped doing that, and the reason that I stopped doing that was because sometimes Latte Dock, especially when it comes to gaming, can get all goofy and cause issues. So I love the fact that I could have my clock in the exact center with Latte Dock with the justify option, but I would actually just use one instance of Latte Dock on the side, kind of like GNOME dash to dock kind of thing, and then use the regular panel and settle for the clock being over on the right. Because
So I've got another question. Sorry, I've got another question on Latte Dock. There's a thing called layouts within that, and you got a couple of default ones, Plasma and Unity. That's part of the Latte Dock, I believe. Now, I'm assuming that you can change your whole desktop and then just save that as a layout, yes? Is that how that works?
I don't know if you can save the layouts yet, or if you have to. Dan, do you know?
I think there is a way. Yeah. It actually, I didn't save them, but I did notice that there was a way to save.
It's got new. You can select new, and it comes up with default.
Yeah.
I suppose you rename it. I didn't get into it too much, but I'm assuming that you could get rid of your panels and put another panel here and there or whatever and save it. That's what I'm thinking. It looks a little bit like the Ubuntu layout structure, a little bit that way. So I'm not sure how that actually works.
Yeah, no, I can see where you can save them in here. You can actually copy them and then save them as a different name and whatnot. So
right, okay.
Yep.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey, there you are,
Lamer.
Hey, Lamer.
For some reason, Zoom doesn't want to open up on Firefox or Waterfox. Some odd reason.
Because Firefox is lame right now.
Joe's in the house.
How you guys doing?
Hey, Joe.
Joe, did you try KDE Neon?
I hate to admit it, on a VM. That's about the extent of all I got a chance to do. So
That's more than I did.
yeah, I had it on. I had it on right away before we even ended the show the other night last week. But I like it. I don't think. Obviously, real hardware is always better, and I still intend to put it back. I had it on my laptop at one time, and it was running fine on there, so I don't see the reason why it wouldn't. And that was not 1804, so I don't know unless 1804 changed something. But even in the VM, it seemed a little boggy, but I thought it was a really clean, nice distro, for what I did do with it. So I'm a little late because the newlyweds came home to visit this week. So, and they're going to be home next week for birthdays and stuff. So
the newlyweds should be doing something else, Joe. They should be off doing something.
They had 2 weeks.
They had 2 weeks. Okay.
They actually went hiking up through. They went to Arizona for their honeymoon, then they hiked all the way up through Utah. They got some photos and stuff. It was beautiful.
Nice.
How's everybody doing tonight?
Good.
Doing well. Everybody's singing the praises of Neon, Joe.
Yeah. I've just been reminded of something.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to ask you, Rocco, the version of Plasma in Kubuntu 1804. What version is that? Do you know?
I don't remember exactly the version of it. It was not the latest version, though. It wasn't. No, it should have been. It should be 5.12, ain't? Because it's the LTS.
I think it's
5.
Yeah,
5.12.5. Okay.
Yeah.
0.5. Yep.
Yeah, there's a problem with some Qt dependency or something or other, which is why they can't go to 5.13, and that won't be ready till 18.10 apparently.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
Not even in the backports.
Nope.
No, not even in the backports. No.
Nope.
No.
Still 5 there as well.
Yep.
But can I just ask a big favour of you guys? Can you stop talking about features? Because I'm tempted to use them and I don't want to go off. So I didn't realise that the Latte Dock came with all these different layouts. So
there's a ton of stuff
about
in
to
it.
click Unity and I thought, no, just stop, leave it alone.
Yep. I have not played with the layouts at all with Latte Dock. I've been happy with the fact that it's just working and I'm not crashing. The only thing that happens for me with Latte Dock is the fact that it is when I come out of suspend, it'll have that artifacts on it. All of the icons will be
NVIDIA user, huh? NVIDIA.
Because it's NVIDIA, and I talked to the developer about it, and he said there's, that's an NVIDIA issue, long-standing, not going to be changed for any time soon. So other than that,
it happens on my AMD one too. So don't go there.
Oh yeah, pretty much any time something suspends, Linux is like, look, buddy, we're just not going to care.
Yeah. Well, the panel doesn't do.
Does anybody use
like
CairoDock?
I used to.
Not
a
anymore.
long time.
Yeah, used to.
Why'd you switch away from it?
Because other things were easier taking its place, like Plank. I mean, 90% of the time I use Plank.
I think
it doesn't
Cairo
have
is just messy.
It doesn't have near the settings as Cairo does, but
To me, it was messy and complicated.
it just works. Plank does. So Cairo is a great dock, but no, I did switch away from it.
Yeah, it's
To me,
strange.
I
I always
thought
used to use
Cairo
Docky
Dock-
over Plank.
Well, Docky and Plank are like not that far off.
They're
so-
very similar.
Yeah, didn't Plank get developed off of Docky because they wanted
Yeah.
a few more features and that,
Yeah.
so that forked
Yeah.
off of it, yeah. But no, Cairo Dock for me was always just way too complicated and didn't like all the themes that they had set out. So
But you can have a farting penguin run across your screen. It's
Right? Right? On fire. No
On
less.
fire.
Oh, that's
Are they
it.
supposed to be painful though?
Next week's challenge, Cairo Dock.
No.
On Cairo Dock on
So okay, so there's 11 guys in here with me here, right? You guys were supposed to figure out how we can open Dolphin as root.
Oh, I got a solution for you.
Yeah. Let me hear it.
You're gonna hate it.
No, I'm not gonna hate it. I'm not gonna hate it.
Sudo apt install PCMan FM.
So I was
you weren't gonna
told.
hate it.
Now, back in the, remember Zeb on Destination Linux, I had mentioned about back in that KDE usability by Nate Graham in one of the previous blog posts that he made. He said they were adding it back in. Okay, so it hasn't. I haven't seen it show up anytime,
No.
but I did get a telegram from somebody saying that it was in there. It was as long as you log in as root, you can open Dolphin as root. Unfortunately, I tried that and it does not work. So even logged in as root, it still says you can't
but doesn't
run
that
Dolphin.
defeat the whole object?
Yeah, that's
Now
pretty
you've
much.
just exposed your whole computer to
But
root.
have you tried running it as sudo su?
Yes. Sudo.
Susu.
And I think when they get it
Sushi.
right,
Sushi.
so the way I understand the implementation is going to be, you won't even need to do it as sudo. It's just when you try to do something that takes elevated privileges, it'll prompt you for it.
That's the way it
That
should
sounds
work.
great.
Yeah,
That's the way Kate and K-Write
yes,
work
it's
now.
going to be just like that. And I think they're getting close. They're just not there yet.
You know what else kind of does that?
Nemo.
Do you know that it's
Yeah.
sad, Chicken, that I can get open as root in
Mhm.
elementary OS right now, and I
I think
can't
it's
get
glorious.
it in KDE?
Just
I mean, that's
open a-
ridiculous.
Just open a console, Rocco, and sudo cp, name of file or folder.
I didn't tell them to install Ranger or something like that. I mean, at least it was a real file manager.
Midnight Commander will do it a lot easier.
Okay, so see, as I missed the first half an hour or something, and I saw the first comment in the chat that I noticed that Heather says Neon sucks. What is the rest of everybody's consensus then?
Oh yeah, it's the worst. It's just absolutely horrible.
It's terrible that it just works so well.
We'll just keep it all to ourselves. It's okay.
Yeah.
I think 8 of the 12 said they had a good experience.
Of
Yeah.
all the
So-
betas I've tried with you guys, this one has been the smoothest. And except for trying to get on here on Zoom, everything.
Well, Frank, that's specific to your computer because mostly everybody's running it right now. So
In other words, AKA user error.
yeah. No,
It's a
seriously,
mix-up between
Zoom.
the seat and the keyboard.
Zoom can be funny sometimes.
Oh,
Yeah, that's a weird one.
Just the way it is, and I don't know why. Sometimes it can be awesome, and sometimes it can just be a headache. So I wouldn't worry too much about it.
Oh, I'm not. I thought I'd be slick this time, be on a different system, and say I'm on it. Everything worked, and I failed.
I will put it on the laptop again because I'm curious to see if 1804 runs any different than 1604 did. So.
And the sad part about this is that it is still basically a beta. It's a preview. and it works so well.
It's
so,
really good.
Yeah.
They
it
put a
is.
lot of time into this. I mean, just seeing how long it took them, and their answer to pretty much everything was, look, just wait. It shows that they've really focused on maturing this and making a good experience for people using the KDE ecosystem.
Yeah, and Chicken, you say that, and normally on any other KDE, Kubuntu, Manjaro, all of them, I can get KDE to crash on demand.
It's usually super easy.
By doing certain things. I can guarantee you I can get KDE to crash. And yet I have done the same exact things on Neon here, and it has not crashed one time yet.
Nice.
I found a really good way to do it. If you plug in a USB drive like over and over while clicking on the little notifier.
I don't believe that's normal behavior.
No, I don't believe that's normal either.
It definitely isn't, but it doesn't work anymore.
I probably would expect it to crash on that. Just saying.
My 2-year-old does stuff like that.
Well, it doesn't crash anymore, so they must have found out.
Well, you could always go on Amazon and get that.
But he's using a good methodology. When I worked in courseware development, we would do things on the courseware, and then the developers would tell us, "Well, you shouldn't be doing that." And I go, "Well, we're just doing what a user might do," and they would laugh at me.
If I go offline, blame Chicken. Yeah.
Oh
man, you gonna try that?
Yeah, but
I have to admit, I've been dumping everything in the kitchen sink on this install since this morning, and it still hasn't even hesitated because I've been Das Geek got that install script that he got from somebody else, and he tweaked it, and that got me started. I'm building one that will basically link your data partition to your home partition, install repositories, install software, and it'll do it for Ubuntu-based, Debian-based, Gentoo-based, Fedora-based. And I've been building and testing and slamming that over and over and over again, and Neon hasn't even hiccuped once.
Right. Nice. Well, normally with the sound options that I have, I can just start switching through the sound outputs, and it'll crash. And like I said, it hasn't done that one time as of yet. So I'm not going to do it right now. Just saying.
and the
USB
USB
come on.
Yeah, the USB trick didn't crash it.
Did you do it repeatedly?
Yeah, did you keep clicking on the little icon?
Absolutely. That's why I went down there, up there, down there, up there. Yeah.
Was it fast enough? I mean,
well, I'm not as young as Chicken, so I might.
I need like a little robo arm.
I just had a thought, actually, Rocco. Could you get Ryan to make you a script for Dolphin root?
There is no script that'll work right now, dude. I mean, there has to be something that works because Sousa got it working.
It works on
you could probably recompile the kernel.
Well, I wonder what version they're using. Are they using the same version of Dolphin? I mean, you could probably install an older version and make it work.
I'm pretty sure they're using an up-to-date version on the rolling Tumbleweed. And it does work, but I'm pretty sure it was on Tumbleweed that I checked it. And
they might be recompiling their own version, maybe.
Yeah. Yep. Probably.
What changed that they took it out? I'm pretty sure there was an issue, and that's why they removed it, and they planned on putting it back. Is that?
Yeah. Oh, they plan on putting it back. I think they're working on a new version to basically make it work better. And when they took it out, they didn't. I think they thought they'd get it done faster, probably, if I had to guess. But
maybe they had some issues with that. Okay.
I think that they might have found an issue that, I mean, this is just me talking. That's not nothing.
Right.
This is just me blurting out something.
Thinking out loud, Rocco.
Thinking out loud, okay.
Yeah.
To me, they found something that was seriously wrong with the way it was being implemented and wanted to circumvent any problems with it, any issues with somebody finding out how to do it. Like a bug type thing, kind of like a back end into security issues with Dolphin, and they just cut it until they could fix it and re-implement it in another way. Right. So that's just me.
I think it's definitely possible. I see we're finding a lot of things now that didn't really appear as problems like a few years ago. Things we didn't really think to deconstruct and just to see, oh, well, this is a huge issue. This is going to be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, things like Wayland are supposed to fix a lot of the security issues that X has, and especially running X apps as root. I mean, there's a lot of problems with that just in general that we didn't even realize were as bad as they are.
Yep.
And especially when you get into your file manager, I mean, that just sounds dangerous, right?
Just giving it the whole tamale there.
Yeah. Well, Chip had mentioned earlier about Netrunner. And, well, does anybody want to say anything else about Neon?
Yes.
It just works.
There we go.
Fluid.
Give it time for 3 days.
Yeah, smooth.
I went back.
It installs like Windows. It infects your system.
What'd you say, Lemur?
Said I give it 3 days to try, then I went to Ubuntu 18.04.
Oh, yeah? And you like Ubuntu better?
I do like it a little better because it has that driver manager. I like the easy, simpler way.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're gonna kind of talk about Netrunner a little bit. Keeping with KDE. Anybody tried Netrunner? I have my opinions on it, but anybody else tried
Got me
Netrunner?
here.
No,
I
I didn't get
I tried it ages ago.
I was going to say it's been a long time.
Okay, so I tried the rolling version, which is based off of Manjaro, and it's actually really nice. It's one of those things where they take their version of KDE and they kind of like make it their own and customize it. So if you went into the system settings of Netrunner, you wouldn't even know where you're at going into the system settings of KDE Neon because they've rearranged all of the categories and all of the places. And they've done an awesome job of rearranging those categories. Things that I had said, like in the KDE videos that I had made last year before, I had said about all of the appearance items should be in one location. So when you go into Netrunner, you go into system settings, I forget what the first thing is listed. Appearance is not the first thing listed, but when you get to the appearance, everything that has to do with appearance is in there. So in Neon, if you go into settings, you're going to have to go into 2 or 3 different locations to get to your theme, and then change your window border, and then change your colors. And in Netrunner, it's all combined into one. That is really awesome. The problem I have with it is that in doing that, you have individuals taking it on themselves to rearrange the operating system, which is great in some ways, but in some ways it needs a little bit tweaking yet. So, like for example, if you go into there's a window management area, and it has everything to do with window management in there, including workspaces and everything. It's all listed. It's all combined really well, except for you have like window actions in a category of other. When you click on other, you have about 20 maybe 15 to 20 items in other that are just random things that it was almost like they went through like 3/4 of the settings and then had something to do and go make a cup of coffee and left those other 15 or 20 items there and just said, you know, we don't know what to do with those. We're going to leave them in other. I mean, window actions of where, like, okay, for example, KDE has an issue with dual monitors as far as when you, it'll open on the wrong monitor, some windows. So in order to fix that, you go into window actions and you put your mouse cursor to follow active screen, or follow screen, follow active cursor. And that fixes that, or for the most part fixes that. And yet that's one of the things in other, which is completely weird, which should be in window management. But I'm going a little bit deep into that. But the idea is, my question to you guys is it a good idea to change KDE, or where do you draw the line in any desktop environment when you start changing things away from, say, the basic bland version of the desktop environment.
If you didn't do that within Linux, you'd never have Peppermint. Yeah, because we've got LMDE, we've got XFCE, we've got a bit of Cinnamon in there, we've got Nemo, we've got the Mint. If you didn't take those portions of something that you liked and tweaked it the way you wanted, then you could be missing out on a number of good distributions. And that's the whole beauty behind Linux. Somebody's made something and it's open source and you have license to change it. So why not?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's very true, because, you know, how many times in the conversations that we've had here has it been said that so many distros are nothing more than a dressed up Ubuntu or a dressed up Deb, you know, whatever, you know what I mean? That basically it's just putting a different cover on the same thing.
Well, it's a big wardrobe.
Well, yeah, that's true. But the point is if you know, like Zeb just said, that's the beauty of this, is if you can respin something out of the basis of one to create something else that might be suitable for somebody else that they might like, that has different things that maybe, because think about it, how many times have we complained about KDE having almost too much, which is kind of what Netrunner is sounding like too, a little bit, but in a different manner, you know, where you've got too many different things. You'll have the same setting in 4 different areas, you know, or whatever, or you're looking for a program and it's in 4 different places or whatever, you know. So I guess to me, I think it's kind of interesting to watch what some of these distros could turn into, you know, with some of the quote unquote, we know how much we love the word respin, but you know, that's reality. What it is it's a respun distro into its own flavor. So
yeah, and a classic example
of that. We have the right to not install
correct
any distro, but isn't this the exact same issue that's causing the major blow up over in the GNOME developers boards and trying to figure out how to get a standardized toolkit together and keep it in one piece?
The easy answer for KDE, and they should have done this years ago, is just to have 2 tabs when you go into settings. One says advanced and one says simple. You click on simple and it gives you the main things that most want.
Right.
I feel like there's a balance to be had. On one hand, I feel that the constant modification and changing of a project when it's implemented on another system can potentially taint the image of the original product, because some people are just bad at what they do. Everybody's bad at something, and sometimes things just don't work.
I resemble that remark.
Well, if you're on a GNOME desktop, what's the first thing you install?
Extensions.
Yeah, GNOME tweaks, right?
But on the other hand, there are a lot, like Zeb had mentioned, Peppermint wouldn't be possible without that kind of tweak. And I feel like there's the consideration of 3 different tiers. The first one is the original product maintainers or creators, and then the second one is the people who implement it, and then the third one is the users who interact with it. And you end up with this like a Venn diagram that kind of looks like one of those blotch paintings, where some people will prefer the original creation on a particular base, and sometimes that's not always available. Whereas in other cases, they like the customization that has already been made for them. And in other cases, it just sucks. So
well, that's the other side of this though, is it's like taking a dartboard, and whether you hit one in the middle and make a home run and you got Peppermint, or you turn around and you hit the wall next to it and you got something that's totally bad. You know what I mean? So
that's Montana Linux.
Yeah.
Don't let Michael hear you.
And Arco has 4 different flavors. I mean, you can do your own, you can do the set, or you can do the standard like I'm doing. And I have SFCE and OpenBots and then i3 if I want to. But did it change anything? No, not really, because I customize it to my needs.
Well, and that's the hardest thing I think about bringing somebody new over to Linux, is because sometimes there's just too much there and it's overload, you know. And that's why when there's, everybody seems to know, oh, I've heard of Ubuntu or I've heard of Mint, because those seem to be the most easy, user-friendly, out-of-the-box kind of thing. But then you get into people like us that we never leave anything alone, and that's where this stuff goes, So it's always this is the glass half empty or half full. You can sit there and talk, talk in circles all day long. The reality of it is in one breath, we complain about Microsoft because you don't get any choices at all. You're basically tied with your hands behind your back. And then when you sit on the Linux side, and it's like we can almost, I don't want to say this, but it's almost like sometimes it sounds like we're complaining that there's too much out there. So, the beauty of it is I'd rather have the choice of too many things and just narrow it down to what I want to mess with than to have my hands tied and not be able to do anything.
Too much is never enough.
Yeah.
Well, I think if you...
I'm going to say you're a power user KDE, and you inspired me to try this KDE challenge, and I did. But then you guys start talking about Plank and Latte Dock and all that. And to me, that just makes everything look like a Mac. So, the power users are going to change things to their specifications. And then the average users, like what you guys were talking about, a new user is just going to take what they get. And then as they learn, then they can change it.
Which in some respects is where KDE Neon will fail, because all you get is a base operating system and nothing to play with. So that's where Kubuntu would be the place to start if you're going to mess with KDE. And then once you understand Kubuntu, then go to Neon and then start having a play with, I think it was Dan said at the beginning, with your blank canvas.
Yep, start right over.
And if you're presented with that blank canvas, you don't know what paints to get, you don't know whether to go watercolor or oil, you've got no idea. So start with the distros like Ubuntu and Kubuntu and Mint. And then once you've learned how to do them, then go and play with the difficult stuff. Which is
but
exactly
98% of the people that are going to come over to Linux now, from like today forward, are going to get onto Mint or Ubuntu or something and be perfectly happy because it just works, and they're not going to worry about learning. And that's the nice thing about those distros, is because my wife does not care what the operating system is. She just wants to go on and be able to play her games.
It's a very good point you raised there, because I'm going to Melbourne in a few weeks, and I know my brother's having issues with his computer, and I'm going to install Linux for him. And I'm trying to figure out which is the best one, right? So what do I do with it? How do I tweak it? Or should I just put it on there and say, use it, this is the basic functions, end of story? Which is probably, because I do most things from a new user perspective as much as I can. But I love to do tweaks and work out, and I just love to tear things apart and see how it works, because it's good to know how that works, because you might come across something that's just amazing that you didn't know about and improves your workflow completely. But your Dreaming Wolf is spot on. Just install it probably and just say, this is how it works. Forget about theming and all that, which is what I love to do, but just get them to use it, right? I think that's the thing, isn't it?
And with like Kubuntu and Mint, you don't even need to tell them how it works, because they're intuitive like Windows is. They just get on it, they'll see the start button and find the menu and go.
It's funny, Frank, that you mentioned what you did too, because for the longest time with any Linux distro, I was used to the Windows flow with the taskbar on the bottom and the menu popping up on the left side and all that. And a few months ago, I finally started forcing myself to put the taskbar on the top, because I just couldn't get used to it looking up all the time. And then now I put Docky on the bottom, and I put what I use most frequently down there. And I find myself using them. I still like the super key, but I find myself using it a lot less than I normally did before, because everything's right there on the bottom. Does it look kind of like a Mac? Well, yeah, but I didn't do it because I wanted it to look like a Mac. I did it because the workflow works better for me.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the only other thing you got to think about, Colin, is what type of machine has he got? Has he got a good spec machine, in which case you can put anything on, or have you got to worry about resources, in which case?
Good point, Zeb. I really don't know. I haven't asked him, to be honest, because we spoke about it quite a while ago, so haven't really brought it up since. But I just thought to myself, I'll just take a few ISOs with me, a couple of USBs, and and I'll be able to probably even just put Etcher on a live disk and install to another USB and just try a couple out maybe. But most of the time I go to install is Linux Mint. Cinnamon normally works on everything in most cases. So that would be my go-to.
And even if it's really low spec, MX17 is one of those install it and just go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and quite honestly, if you're going to do a mint flavor, you can also do the XFCE version, which actually I found to be quite nice. And that's lighter resource, too, for a mint flavor. It's very similar.
Kubuntu on pretty much anything these days. It scales to the.
You don't agree with that, Colin?
Plasma, the way it gears itself back on lower end machines automatically. Yeah, Kubuntu would work.
Rob, what were you saying?
2 years ago, I installed Mint on a guy's computer, and I skinned it to look just like Windows 10. Yeah. And I told him, don't try to download Windows programs because it's not going to work.
Yeah.
He loved it. And then he called me up one night, and he goes, well, I tried to download this great program my wife told me to try, and it won't work. And I had to explain to him that he didn't have a Windows machine.
Yeah.
Robert, what were you saying?
Well, I was just going to say to Joe, XFCE is good, but I think Cinnamon has a very, very good implementation that has a good similar workflow to Windows. But somebody mentioned Kubuntu. Now, I haven't tried Kubuntu. I always go to KDE Neon, but that's why I was asking the version number of Plasma, because I may even try that, because that tiled menu is a Windows 10 menu. You can just drag. I don't know if anyone's tried the tiled menu that's just come up.
Tiled menu is really good.
Yeah, you just drag it in there and it looks exactly like a Windows 10 tiled menu. It doesn't have all the live stuff scrolling through and distractions and all that.
And whatnot.
No,
It's cool though.
It's just all your shortcuts right there in the tiled section. So that looks good. So that might be another good one to try as well.
Ubuntu 18.04 right now. I'm using Plasma 5.12, but that's on the KDE backports.
Yeah, so
if you're worried about just putting it on there and forgetting it, what difference does it make that it hasn't got Plasma 13 and it hasn't got the latest KDE?
True. I just wondered whether... No, that's right. But I just wondered whether the tiled menu was in there, because that would be a nice little one to put in just to give that Windows 10 feel.
It is, Colin, because it's been in there for a long time.
Okay, that's where I was getting at. Because maybe Kubuntu
has been rock solid since the alpha, so it's a good choice.
Yeah.
I'm just impressed with Plasma, the way, like even it was Dan, wasn't it? Or was it Rob? I think it was Rob, the showing, how much memory it's using from cold boot. It's just incredible.
I feel like something that needs to be addressed with using KDE in general, just for end use goals, is that there are not very many good things to say about it in terms of online connectivity services. Yet you can get an email client up and running, Kmail if you get it working, which when you do, it works. But the calendar application, calendar, I think it's called K Organizer or something like that. I mean, really ridiculous name for something like that, but it also is not. I feel like we need to improve the level of connectivity to services and accounts, in that a lot of Windows users and Mac users can easily just log into their machine and have that available in every single app already synced by the time they log in once.
So ignoring the fifth letter of the alphabet, which distro should they use for that?
See, I think you bring up some good points, Chicken, because for me, the only thing that stops me from using KDE is I've always been a GNOME GTK type person, because I know if there's any issues, I know how to sort them, whereas I'm not up to speed with a lot of issues that can pop up in KDE itself. Now, I like to use Thunderbird. I think it's a good email client by default. And all, and they work better under GTK, under Ubuntu, and Ubuntu Budgie was probably either Mint or Ubuntu Budgie were probably the two distros I was looking for a new user. So that's what I was looking at. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, but I think that the way it is right now, I mean, it may have used to been a bigger issue a while ago, but right now, Thunderbird has no issues working in KDE right now. And like you said, Rob, the memory usage for no matter what kind of machine the guy has, it's going to run well for him. And if you're running Kubuntu or something like that, they're not even going to notice.
I don't have an open box, and the difference between my open box on Debian and KDE Neon is 100 meg. So
yeah,
right.
You're never going to see that.
And it's got 1% CPU usage when it's sitting there, just
incredible.
Yeah, and then load up Windows and see what you got there. I mean, I loaded up my Windows 7 machine the other day at work, and at idle, I think I was at 2 gig.
Yeah, but Windows is now.
Sounds like GNOME.
Yeah, I mean, it's terrible.
Are you telling me you don't want to spend another 200 for more RAM?
I mean, it is coming down in price, but no.
Yeah.
But Windows has never worried about how much RAM it's got. It will use, because Windows' philosophy is idle RAM is wasted RAM.
Yeah.
I will be honest, it in a lot of cases, it's not entirely wrong. There are a lot of wasteful processes, but a lot of it does actually impact your performance with the system.
Yeah.
And that things will be quicker, snappier, because they're already kind of loaded and ready for you to use. That being said, anything that you don't actually need in that case, and if you're running lean on resources, then it's definitely just cut off the hand to spite the arm, cut off nose to spite the face. One of those body parts.
Cut off your nose.
That's fine.
That one.
When you tweak Windows, the first thing they do is shut off some of the fetch services, so you have everything preloading and starting up, and all this resource taxing going on. And then the other thing too, people don't do is they don't go in and change the cores depending on your CPU that would be available for boot up. You know, they'll use, it usually starts up with a single core. So think about it. You got all these processes starting with maybe a single core, whether you've got 4 or 8 cores or whatever your CPU is, and you're not utilizing it. So that's another reason why it seems slower on boot up too.
Yep.
And then there's so many processes. If they went through and they one of the things they should do is check off, you know, hide all the Microsoft processes and look and see what everything else that's running. Do you need all the update services for every software program that's running on there? You know, so
yeah.
Yes, but you said, Joe, about how about the tweaks of having not everything started, but all of those tweaks are put in to make it better.
by whose definition?
Yeah, but that's what cracks me up about it is they put them in to make the system faster. It's like,
Rocco, this laptop is running KDE Neon, just like we were talking about, and it's 724 megs out of 8 gigs. When it was a Windows 10 machine at this setting with the system monitor up, it'd be at 2.1 gig. So all those faster processors doesn't necessarily compute.
Yeah.
Well,
it goes. Think about that. I'm sorry, Rocco. I mean, but if you go in and you look at your startup applications in a Linux distro, and you go and look at your startup stuff that's in Windows, that says it itself. Because you have to scroll down to see everything that's running in Windows. You can go in a small pane like this and see what's running in Linux.
Yeah.
Well, I try to steer clear away from mentioning the whole memory thing because I never have, like with my system, I never have good results as far as memory is concerned. And not that that's a big deal. I mean, the system has 16 gigabytes of memory. I never, ever run out of memory, regardless of what desktop environment I'm running. But, I mean, I hate to say it like everybody's saying megabytes. I mean, I hate to say it right now. And I got a lot of stuff going on right now, but I'm at 5.2 gigabytes of memory.
Yeah.
So
in Neon.
I'm at 2.19 on mine, and I've got 16 gigs in here.
So I try never to make the point of the low memory because it's all going to depend on how much memory you have and what you have running and everything else. But it is nice to see that on a low spec machine that it can handle it regardless of what's in it. So
Yeah, and it also
Well,
depends on
the first machine I tried the KDE Neon on was an AMD 3000 plus processor with 4 gigs of RAM with a very, very, very old NVIDIA video card, and it was snappy, it was quick, it was easy. So, hey.
And this whole memory usage from cold boot really does just depend upon your kit, because I've seen people say that a particular software runs at 280 meg, and I've loaded it up and I'm just under 500, because your hardware and the way your system works is just totally different. So it's really down to what you use. And yeah, like Rocco, I'm on about 4 gig at the moment because I've got lots of other stuff running in the background. So yeah, I never worry about the memory side of things.
Yeah, I'm not one of those people that look to gain like every little megabyte of memory. And, you know, it's great that it can run on low memory, but I don't need to squeeze the last megabyte of memory out. If I got 16 gigabytes and I only use 600, what's the point of having 16 gigabytes? I mean,
I guess the point is,
bigger horsepower you have in the machine, I've noticed it seems like it tends to want to use a little bit more in what you're doing, and that could be the hardware pulling some of that stuff too. It's not all about the software.
Right. No, and that's exactly where I was going to go. It seems like KDE is able to scale better with that, though, on the lower spec stuff for sure. And if you've got the resources, it's going to pull them. But if it doesn't, and it knows that, it's going to reserve it.
Yeah.
Right. And regardless of which one it's on, it operates smoothly.
So just a question for you. We all know the GNOME desktop does run on like one processor or something. Is that how it works? Like I'm not when it comes to memory, it seems to suck up memory or something. Does Ubuntu Budgie suffer from the same thing? Do you know?
There's two different kind of things going on there. The first one is that the shell and I believe the renderer or something like that. There's essentially the compositor. Sorry, there's two major components of GNOME, and obviously all the rest of it that's tied in with those that are just running on one thread.
Right.
Instead of being split off, being able to handle their own resources and actually manage their performance based on what's happening, they're bottlenecked by whatever they can possibly run in one thread, which is ridiculous. It's just asking for problems. It will work in a lot of cases until it doesn't. And the memory thing, a lot of that was there was just a memory leak. I don't know exactly what caused it. Something about animations that was not checked properly, and but that's been solved. But Budgie didn't necessarily have the same issues that GNOME had in that case. Budgie used a lot of the GNOME stuff, like Mutter, which is the compositor, and but it uses a lot of the GTK components, but it wasn't necessarily the same issue because it doesn't use like GNOME shell.
Right. Okay.
All that flash comes at a price. Just remember, I mean, think about it. If you want to make something look prettier and flashier, it's going to come at a cost.
Duct tape.
There you go.
And WD-40.
WD-40. Because I know, and Vegemite. I know because I know we had a few issues last week when it comes to Ubuntu Budgie, but every time I've used it, I haven't really had many issues, and that's one of the ones I'm looking at probably using because it has very good and simplistic, what can you say, tweaks, so to speak, than what Linux Mint does, and it seems to implement them a lot better as well on the Budgie desktop, and it looks really nice.
Yeah, and theming is easy to find, and you don't have to search around for it. Yeah.
Absolutely. They got their own theming there as well. So
I feel like a total animal saying this, but I actually preferred the early Budgie where like the menu like automatically like ordered things depending on what you use and so
No, I did not like that at all.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
So many people hated that, but I loved it so much.
And Colin, make sure if you're going to do the Budgie that he doesn't have an NVIDIA card in there.
Right. Okay. Yeah. It is a laptop, so I would have probably okay. I would say, but see, I use Budgie on this one. Has an NVIDIA as well, but I don't install the drivers, so that's why I don't have issues. I'm not a gamer, so I don't worry about
then you don't need
hooking up the. Yeah, that's right. He's not a gamer either. He just wants it for, email and YouTube and all that. Just the basic stuff that most people use it for.
Good old Minecraft.
Yeah. Minecraft, where you can fly airplanes between your desktop icons.
Right.
Give him Kubuntu, and just to blow his mind away, put wobbly windows on the worst.
Oh,
yeah. So it takes half an hour to settle down.
Hey, you laugh. KDE does the best implementation of wobbly windows, bar none, out there from anyone.
Wobbly windows to my girlfriend, and she turned like all the settings like to the maximum. you move it 1 pixel, and it flies off the screen.
No, but see, that's what other desktop environments and other tweak tools do, is they make the windows so wobbly it's like jello, and you can't even you start moving it, it's gonna go for an hour.
Yeah, you catch up to it next week.
Yeah.
That's when you keep a bucket next to you.
The present version of Knoppix automatically puts config into its desktop. And I fixed a Windows laptop one night in front of somebody, and they were seeing me, and I was using 4 or 5 panels, so I was using the cube and all that, and had the wobbly windows going on it by default. And they were going, "Where'd you get that? Can I put that on my computer?" And I go, "Well, yeah, if you let me put this operating system on it." They backed off real quick.
I'll have to say, when you drag your window up and it goes boing, that looks pretty cool.
That is really neat. I will say, you know what? Especially with the latest update, KDE does the best blur I have seen.
It's nice.
Oh, that is true. Yeah,
they had blur before, but they have made it
better.
so much better.
So good.
Yeah.
And now for me, I don't need that stuff. I'm just happy with closing and opening my windows. So,
it's eye candy for sure.
Nice though.
Well, going back to Netrunner for a minute, one more thing I did want to bring up is they have the latest version of KDE Plasma, and yet one of the things they took out was the brand new spanking thing that I love, which is when you first boot into your system, it gives you the options for dual monitor layouts. Like, do you want it to be to the left or to the right? And this is a brand new thing in the new version of Plasma, and yet it's like not there, or it wasn't present when I first booted into Netrunner, which was disappointing, because that's like something that should be in every distro.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
They need to tweak it though, because it doesn't work with triple monitors.
File a
One day
book.
I'll join you, Zeb.
But anyway,
One
of the reasons why I brought that up was because there's been discussion on the GNOME side of how much should be allowed to be tweaked. They're going so far as mentioning taking the ability away to customize a theme, or to use a customized theme on the desktop.
The interesting thing about that is that I mean, it's not necessarily that GNOME particularly themes in the first place. It's more that they didn't shut it off, so you could obviously just throw it, because a theme is a really complicated thing. It's more than just a theme. It controls everything to an insane degree. So there's a lot of potential for issues there, and I feel like a lot of it has to do with them not really wanting that to be a problem and pushing consistency of some sort with the product.
Well, that's why I brought it up. Is
From
because
all I've heard, the developer who said that was more just throwing out, these are all possibilities. It's not like we're actually going to do that.
Right.
But it is a possible way of handling the situation. And everybody, all the podcasts and whatnot who report on this stuff immediately jumped on that one option that he chose because it's the most outrageous and the most clickbaity. But it's not like he's, really leaning that way. He doesn't really want to do that. He's just like, this is a possibility, but you know, it's probably not going to happen. It just, we need to figure out where the balance is.
It's the most complicated thing out there, because one thing that takes the Peppermint developer the longest to get right is he says, I'm sorry, guys, you're going to have to give me another week. I am still tweaking themes because this has changed, that has changed. It doesn't look right here. It doesn't look right there. And if we could get rid of that theming issue, then he could have the next LTS out a month sooner. Really, it is that complicated. So I understand from a development point of view why they want to do it, but from a user point of view, I think it'd be disastrous.
Oh, from also what I've heard is Qt has, for the most part, settled into a solid framework that developers know they have to work within to get things to work and look right. GTK still has a lot more flexibility. They don't have as set a framework. And if they are going to implement a more set framework, it's going to take pretty much an entire rewrite of the tool set, which they're not at this point really willing to do.
Right. Especially since they're supposed to achieve compatibility with previous versions.
This is an interesting subject because I was chatting with Joseph McCullough on Telegram, and he was, and I did put it in my last theming follow-up for Linux Mint 19. And Linux Mint themselves are looking at taking away the window border theming option, possibly. It's not an absolute at this point in time, but there's a gentleman who has made some themes on one of the Linux Mint forums, whereas you change the controls and it changes the window border and the controls as well. So there's no window border selection. So he's already started doing that. So maybe that's something that is coming up in the future, what you're talking about right now. So that's interesting.
I mean, that shows how easy it is to do that. The fact that you can change the window controls and it just changes the borders as well.
But you said, Dave, that it's a possibility, that it's not going to, they're not talking about doing it tomorrow. It's a possibility. And I agree that is the case, but I didn't think at any point in time they would get rid of system tray icons either, because that seems to be a pretty important piece of your system, to be able to have a system tray icon for all your programs. Now, what they're trying to do is they're trying to kind of like push developers or apps into writing all their apps to a standard set. And I get what they're trying to do, but the problem is the users are the ones in the middle who are stuck with a system that maybe they don't want, they can't use. And I bring it up again because like Chicken Elementary is going the same way.
Yeah.
Which was a complete downer. I've been a huge fan of waiting for Juno to come out.
Yeah. That is going to be a downfall.
Yeah. And only to find out, and I don't know how I missed it. But
same here.
But they are taking the GNOME stance, and they have completely removed the system tray icons from Juno.
Yeah.
So
but that is part of what is driving the resurgence of KDE and Plasma. In addition to how good they are at the moment, the fact that GNOME, rather than biting the bullet and rewriting the toolkit and getting the APIs up where they have the flexibility and the stability as Qt does at the moment, unless they're willing to do that, they're going to keep losing more and more people over to the Qt side, that toolkit, until they have no choice in the matter.
Well, I mean,
they'll always have a choice, but
yeah. In light of all of this, I thought, okay, you know what? I will try using the latest version without changing anything. No themes, no tweak tool, no extension changes, none of that stuff. Just plain Jane using it, no system tray additions. I've got one word for you guys. Adwaita.
That's what they want all of the themes based off of, though. That's basically the set that they want it based off of, and you just
I feel like it's
make
difficult
it work with that.
to take seriously that they're making design choices when this exists and is the default and what they are encouraging. That's ridiculous. It's a mess.
Yeah, but this whole idea, and one of the comments that was made, and that was that the operating system should not have to make their system work with all the apps. It should be the other way around. The apps should have to make their apps work with the operating system. And I get that to a point, but when this to me is different. Somebody had said about elementary, well, that's what they kind of do anyway. They want you to work with their, Matt, you had said that earlier.
I did.
That, you take what they give you basically. But I think this crosses that line. There's a line where I can accept, they want you to use the apps that are installed on the system. I can accept that they really don't want you to add PPAs, and if you want to add, you can. But this, to me, not removing the system tray altogether, it crosses that line to say, man, that's a deal killer. That I don't know if I can use that system. Not because I don't want the apps like Telegram to make their app work with elementary or GNOME or the systems that don't have the system tray, but I'm stuck in the middle. There's nothing I can do to make Telegram or Skype or any of the other programs that need that. There's nothing I can do to make them work with a system that doesn't have it. Yet the developers are forcing you into that situation where you either don't have it or you use something else. I think it's a shame.
A lot of what we saw.
We just talk about tying hands, and it was the big W.
Here we go. We got two people tying hands.
I was going to say that this does remind me of when GNOME took away the depreciated the system tray stuff the first time around, where they're basically telling developers, we know better than you, is essentially what it boils down to.
Well, they want them to follow a certain
thing. And that's fine, but unfortunately when it's like GNOME, like in this case, elementary, that's kind of their shtick. But my issue with like GNOME when they did it was GNOME's like, build here. Well, we can't build here if you keep breaking everything. Elementary, they're trying to build essentially kind of what Solus does. That's why Solus kind of took Budgie back. They're like, we don't like what you guys are doing. And that's kind of what that reminds me of. Where it's
GNOME
like,
didn't actually break anything. What they did was you're no longer allowed to build out there because what you're building keeps breaking what we have here.
Oh, because GNOME has a bad habit of breaking their own crap.
It's one of the issues that I feel like app indicators present, as much as I like app indicators, is that they're just not. I mean, if we could have standardized app indicators, it'd be great, but that just was not happening at all.
No.
So, I mean, we realistically could not rely on that, and it was going to keep breaking anyway. Like, if any of you guys have used Mate, you would know that there's a notification section and an app indicator section, and they both do almost the exact same thing, except some applications will go here, some will go there, and they'll function completely differently, and you have no choice but to use both.
Sounds like you're pretty passionate about that.
That's how you really feel there, yeah.
Oh, no. By the way, somebody mentioned borders earlier. You remember my complaint, Rocco, on the 17th version of Mate where you could never grab a corner or whatever?
Yeah.
That's not an issue in this 1804 release.
Yeah, it works super well.
Point release, it works great. Point release works just like Peppermint. They work. You go to that corner and boom, it grabs it. No.
But that was something that frustrated me, and I realistically couldn't blame Mate for that because they needed both in order to have full functionality.
Yep.
You shouldn't need two separate things to do one job.
Well, the whole idea of the app indicators, it kind of like that's exactly the reason I brought it up, to have the discussion of when is it too much, where an operating system says you can only do this amount. When does it not become? And I don't want to say it's not going to it's going to go away from being Linux, because that's not the idea of Linux.
Yeah.
But the option of using Linux is the idea that you can do with it what you want. And we're getting to a point where after a while there will be many distributions that we won't be able to do what we want. And I like the idea of having standardized toolkits. I like the idea of having standardized things so that everything is cohesive. But there comes a point where is this going to kill the usage of Linux in certain distributions?
I have a fear about that because, to me, when developers say that, you can only do things this way, you can only do the things that way, to make their process easier, they're starting to sound like Microsoft.
Right.
And, hey, that's one of the reasons I'm on Linux is I can customize anything.
Well, part of that's going to come back to how much of the Linux community are we as the tweakers and the hackers and customizers, and how much of the growing Linux community is just the install it and forget it.
Bingo.
And the install it and forget it crowd,
they're growing.
They're growing.
Notice
100%.
That's a good point.
Environment.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we better take arms then. Let's go.
But you just cut off your arm despite your nose.
Yeah, something about the face and nose.
I think it is a good point. It is a good point. Are we getting to the point where Linux needs to be like Windows is, where people just install it, just use it, and maybe it does. I don't understand a lot of this of what you're talking about, back-end stuff and all that, but is it making it easier for the developers to have something standard in place so they're not messing around so much? I don't know.
It is, Colin. It is. It's definitely the way they want to do it, and that's the reason behind why they want to do it. But like I said, at some point it crosses a line to say that usability goes out the window. Yeah. Because, like I said, the user is the one that is affected by it. It's not the people using elementary OS as developers. It's not the people that are just going to set it and forget it and only use the apps that are in the store. It's the other users that are affected by that. And I don't want to keep harping on elementary because GNOME was the first one to do it, and they're the big proponent behind it. But like I said, I was just hit with that today, where I just couldn't believe it that they were pretty much agreeing with that. So
yeah, for some reason
there's nothing wrong with standardizing it, but don't strip it down to the bone. And that's one of the things that I didn't care for with elementary, because it was too simplistic. To me, it felt like I couldn't do anywhere near what I wanted to do with a typical distro.
Well, I got a channel for you.
But see, that's the thing, Joe. In elementary, it does become simplistic by default, but you can do 99% of the things you can do on other Linux distributions, you can do on elementary. That is one of those things where you can't. Like, there's nothing you can... If they remove app indicators, then there's nothing you can do about that.
Right.
You can't fix that.
That's cool.
Yeah. The masses
when you start taking
Linux, and we're all going to migrate to BSD.
Don't subjugate us to true OS. No.
But on that thing, didn't Deepin OS do exactly the same thing? You can configure Deepin to do what you want. Open up one of their apps, and it's Deepin.
It's
totally ignore.
Yeah, you can't do nothing with Deepin. It doesn't matter what theme you put in there. It just uses its own theme. And
can I just say how ridiculous that is, considering that the place you select the theme is part of the desktop? Why even have it there?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. And the other thing, Rocco, that surprises me is if these app indicators in the system tray we're talking about, aren't we? The app indicators that sit in the system tray. If they're that useful, why are they being taken away? Do they not ask the question? Or is it a process that they need to do?
I can answer this
somewhere else. Okay.
So you right now, taking them out strips you of a lot of functionality. In a perfect world where all of this stuff is already working, essentially the thing like where you find your applications, your dock and everything, can already have those types of interactions that your system tray might be able to have. You may notice that in Ubuntu, sometimes when you get notifications in an app that's pinned or open, you'll see the notification counter. You'll have options in there that you normally see in the system tray. So that kind of stuff isn't necessarily intended to go away in that you lose your functionality and your ability to access apps that aren't open and that are hidden in a system tray. The issue is that nothing is really prepared for that right now. And the only way that has really come about for that to eventually become a thing as it was to more or less just rip it out from under them and just say, well, look, now you got to do it.
Right.
And eventually it'll work, but right now it's just hard for everyone because the developers now have to rework their apps to follow this kind of standard, which is hard. Developing apps is hard enough as it is. Having to constantly adjust what you're doing underneath is ridiculous. And then the users, I mean, consistency is important here. And now the users who are looking for this in one place now have to look for it somewhere else. Or it might not be there at all for quite some time, if ever, depending on if the app developer can even get that implemented. Some apps won't even run without the system tray because that functionality was part of how it worked.
Robert, you've been trying to get in for the last couple of minutes. What do you got to say about it?
In terms of system tray, I think it's important. I don't like the way that GNOME's going at all. And it's one of the reasons why I think I only ever used it once in the 12 months I've been using Linux distributions. I used it once, took it off, and it hasn't gone on again since. Probably won't be. So it's a big deal for me. I wouldn't. I don't like it. No, I think you should have those notifications.
Well,
Probably
like
a bit
Chicken
late, but can you turn your mic up, Rob?
Like Chicken said, there's yeah, that is better.
Yeah. That's great.
There is other ways to get the indicators, like for example, Thunderbird. If you get an email in Thunderbird in elementary, you're going to see the little red icon saying, "Hey, you got 4 new emails," which is the I guess what they would consider the proper way to get you a notification. But the problem lies in the fact that most programs don't work with that yet. And like I'll use Telegram again for an example. If you use Juno right now, it's not going to work in the dock to give you the notifications, and it doesn't. And there is no system tray app indicators, right. So now you have no icon whatsoever to get to your to even see that you have a notification from Telegram.
Mm-hmm. Now, Chicken, my question to you is: do you think we're going the way of like jump lists and that kind of stuff, where the right click on the application to say down in the dock and that kind of stuff is going to be the way of how we do indicators as a whole, though?
I don't think so. I think that it's a potential option. I think that it may be a stepping stone, but I don't think that I feel like that would be taking a step back a little bit, because it shouldn't particularly be the type of interaction you're having. It shouldn't necessarily be fiddling around with a little menu to see what's happening. I feel part of it happens with notification centers. That's becoming more and more of a priority, as well as actual status symbols as part of the application's icon on the system. So I feel like it's going to kind of be a mix between the two. Hopefully they won't lean towards the just, yeah, everything's going to be a jump list, because that would be a step backwards in terms of usability.
Yeah, because you're just taking everything from the system tray, throwing it down the dock, saying, "There you go."
Well, that's pretty much what they're doing, though. I mean,
now,
that is
pretty much, yeah.
But if they bite the bullet and actually do that, then when things settle down, they'll be able to build back out from that from a more sturdy base.
This does remind me a lot.
They may be hoping to do in the long run.
Yeah.
And I agree, and that's a great goal, but it seems to me they're taking the very Yeah.
Yeah, yanking it out is going to hurt.
Yep.
I had I feel like this is similar to what happened when 1710 came out and we switched from Unity to GNOME. It was something that a lot of people didn't like. A lot of people did like, but it was a very, very difficult thing to do that just had to happen if that was going to be pushed forward. And I feel like it wasn't necessarily the switch from Unity to GNOME. It was using something like Wayland, which obviously didn't work for the LTS, but I feel like pushing these things has to happen at some point. Otherwise, no one's going to follow suit. I just don't particularly think it's ever a positive experience for most of the people involved that aren't making the decisions.
Well, that was one of the what I think it was Cassidy said for Elementary, that it was a decision to do we put it out for another release and hold off on pulling this system tree app indicators out and just fix it for another release, as we've done for the last couple releases, where they've been trying to get people to make it work with the new system, with the new guidelines, but they just decided, you know what, it's best to just pull it out now and let everybody deal with it. But
we've been singing the praises of Plasma. Doesn't anybody remember KDE, what was it, 3 or 4? That was an absolute train wreck. And they went in and basically rewrote it from the ground up.
Yeah.
And if GNOME would do that, just bite the bullet, go in and rewrite it from the ground up and start fresh like KDE did, then there's a good chance that they would be able to create a desktop that's as vibrant and growing as Plasma is.
I don't know if they could do that now, though. With,
I don't think
they're almost going to have to.
Too late.
But when you're talking Ubuntu now, you're talking about companies, systems, and that would be a disaster.
But see, GNOME is not canonical.
GNOME is huge, though.
No, GNOME is not canonical, but now GNOME is the face of canonical.
Yeah, and canonical relies on GNOME,
right?
Which that is probably the biggest thing that they didn't want to have to do, and because they decided to kill off Unity, now they have to. So any changes GNOME makes like that is going to affect canonical or any Red Hat, any other distro or whatever that relies on it.
Yeah.
But see, even Ubuntu makes changes to GNOME that drive the GNOME developers crazy.
That's because anything outside the 7 usability testers that actually use GNOME.
I remember when Unity first came out, it caught so much flack and people hated it, and you heard nothing but grief and gripe. But the reality of it is that quickly went away, and then now with this switch, when they dropped it, all of a sudden it's like everybody was in love with it. And kind of comparing it to the big W again, it kind of reminds you when Windows 8 came out, everybody hated it, just couldn't stand it until all this stuff with Windows 10 happened. And then all of a sudden, you don't hear anything about Windows 8 again anymore. It's almost kind of the same flavor on the Microsoft side of things. But Unity, if you think back, right, when they first went to heaven, we went, "What the heck is this?" Because the workflow was different. They just didn't. They couldn't figure out how to really get through it initially. And then once they did, and they got used to it, and they realized how nice it was, and how easy, and having the sidebar and all that, because then you got more screen real estate, whatever. And now everybody forgets that. And there's all this complaining about, and I agree. I think it's like anything else. When do you keep putting a clean Band-Aid on a dirty cut before you turn around and just say, you know what, it's time to exercise the wound and start over and clean it out and come up from scratch to try to get some new life to it?
Well, what I will say is, because I used Unity from the time it launched, I'm still using it now.
I'll give you that, Matt.
I'm using it on an 1804 base at this point. The biggest problem with Unity was it was GNOME 2, and they were trying to do GNOME 3 things with GNOME 2, and it crashed consistently.
Yeah.
And it was just like, here's our netbook UI. We're going to throw it on a full HD screen and hope it doesn't break. And it was a terrible experience. Then
they admit they launched early too.
And Mark Shuttleworth would be the first to tell you that was probably the dumbest decision they made as far as introducing that. That's why they did the whole Skunkworks stuff instead. But you do get to a point where it's not a Band-Aid. You're putting you're trying to cauterize a wound that you can't basically. And to me, GNOME and the way it's implementing certain things and features and functions, the base isn't solid. You can't build on a unsolid base.
Right. Well,
Back to my castle.
Okay, the other analogy is building a house. Same thing. You got a foundation. If you got a poor foundation, eventually the structure is going to come down. And it's no different with even stuff like this that you can't tangibly see, but it's the same premise. I mean, when you think about it,
it is. But I think at some point you do have to say, okay, we have to start from scratch, and I think kind of GNOME's at that point. I mean, you have your compositor and your mutter and all that stuff tied into one thread. There goes your desktop if that crashes. It's just broken by design. Honestly, that's just my feeling on it.
I mean, I don't disagree with you.
I'm not saying there are not good ideas in GNOME and GNOME 3, and some of the stuff is really good, and I do like that. I like the way the virtual desktops are handled, all that kind of stuff. But some of the decisions that they make and the way it's built, and I'm not just writing on GNOME. Elementary's got its own problems, like with getting rid of this design that they want to do is just not not right now.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. What was that?
Yeah.
Breaking up a little bit.
I'm saying certain parts of Elementary are broken.
Yeah.
Just go back to Minecraft.
I don't think it's broken by design. I think it's just still a design that's geared towards hardware and software environments that are 10 to 15 years old.
And wide.
In that case would be broken by design because hardware software from 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah, but I think the code behind GNOME is so messed up. I mean, it's just a disaster behind the scenes that it's like you would have to rewrite the whole thing.
Yeah. Agreed.
Guess what? We'll be complaining about that because they'll rewrite it and somebody will not be happy how they implemented something. There's always somebody who's not going to be happy.
Me.
But the question is, how long would that take? I mean,
it's
GNOME is what, 20 years?
We're 10 years into GNOME 3. I mean,
right,
come
but
on.
that's what I'm saying. So, are you pretty much saying we're going to take a setback for another 10 or 15 years? Because it's not like they just picked up any more developers. I mean, Canonical, whatever, is kind of has their own thing with their desktop. So it's they're using GNOME, but they're not exactly working side by side with GNOME. Let's put it that way.
No, there are certain features and functions that work with GNOME on, but on the same note, there's a divide where that's your thing, this is our thing.
You're right,
and,
exactly.
If they started right now, 3 to 5 years, they'd be back to a functional level, and it would be another
3 on top of that.
Beyond that, before they got to a reasonably good level. So, yeah, the better part of a decade to get to where Plasma has gotten to.
Yeah, I mean, would it be better to fork it off and go that route? Start over again?
This is a family channel. You can't say that.
Well, I mean, in fairness, we did get. I was going to say, in fairness, we did get Mate out of that happening with
Right.
there are perks to that.
That's true.
Doesn't Budgie have its roots in GNOME as well?
Yeah.
Yep.
I always said that GNOME's greatest gift was GTK. Because, like you said, we got Mate, we got even Elementary, all these great spin-offs from that. Yeah. But the question, I think, it's for GNOME is the ultimate direction. Like they really are trying to like rethink the future of computer interfaces. You know, like as if you had to start today, how should someone use a computer, and moving away from a Windows XP ideology of a bottom left and things on the bottom right for indicators and that kind of thing. And so I think they're just kind of like treading along as being trying to somewhat futuristic, but at the same time be futuristic, but not in a power user sense, but be futuristic in like a brand new grandma or mom or dad sense. And when you have app indicators on the top right, also in the dock, and then also on that bottom little block thing, the bottom left thing.
That for the record.
Yeah, I know exactly. It's like we're all twisted some way or some other way. But like so we're trying to remove those.
Yeah, but the question then, Prophetic, is, you know, if you're going to redesign the desktop or redesign GNOME, what do you redesign it for? Do you redesign it around the laptop, around the desktop, around something mobile? I mean, like
around mobile, because chances are we are the last generation that is really going to have desktops.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in a minority.
Laptops.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, even right. Laptops are all touch. I mean,
well, they do say that there is some element of intentionality behind how they do things, because they even on a podcast episode, I'm not going to say the host of that show, but he was on there and he was saying that we want to design GNOME to be touch friendly on a laptop, but not mobile friendly, because that's just a total different paradigm. And so it's like, so that's why a lot of the freaking like title bars are so thick and huge. It's because if you wanted to touch your screen, you could use that, and it's not, you won't be like missing the area so much. So
and GNOME is probably the closest there, right?
I would think so too. But going back to the original question with Rocco, was like, you know, what's it designed for? It's designed for workflow. It's almost like you forget about your desktop and you're only thinking about your apps. Hence,
imagine you're on a boat and you have to paint.
A sinking ship. Yeah.
You want to kind of
cut your arm off.
That wasn't me this time.
Oh, man.
But you know what? That's exactly, again, I hate to keep comparing it to it, but that's exactly what Windows 8 tried to do. They wanted to cover all aspects. They treated it as if it was going on a tablet. And we saw how wonderful that went over. And it's the same premise here.
They went too far.
I understand what they're trying to do here, but it doesn't work right now. And maybe down the road it would. But to try to build a distro that's going to work on all different types of platforms, whether it's a tablet, whether it's mobile, whatever they're reaching for here, it doesn't work now. And it just...
They're not reaching for mobile.
Right now, not perfected.
No. Would it be safe to assume that the only one that understood that, you know, they were building for a code base was a thing?
You cut out a little bit.
Was Canonical really the only company or group of people in Linux that understood that form factor is the thing that we're dealing with? The way we input and the way we interface with, you know, technology or whatever you want to call it, because the experience with Ubuntu Touch, which is basically, you know, the same code base as X, you know, flavor that they had at the time, was a different experience than, say, Unity on a desktop or a laptop. But the tablet experience was similar to the phone, but just a little bit different.
Yeah, so the launcher was on the left for the phone. The launcher was on the left, and you slide out, and it looks like a Unity dashboard, like a little Unity dash dock thing. On the same thing with when you're using it, Unity 7 on the laptop. So Mark Shuttleworth was like the most craziest visionary ahead of his time to even try to pull that off. Technically, he did pull it off by actually releasing a product that people actually paid money for. But that was the only one that was actually trying to incorporate mobile and desktop and tablet. GNOME never said they ever wanted to do mobile. They're trying to make it mobile friendly now that Librem 5 is, but that's not even like an official thing. They're only doing with touch. on a laptop. And then even then they're very conservative about making that a major design point.
Well, one thing I can't help wonder about though, and maybe I'm reaching here, is especially if you think about the timing of this, the last couple of years or whatever, that this really started coming to be a thing, is how closely they've gotten in bed with Microsoft. And is Microsoft any bit of their influence in this, or why they're wanting to do this?
Who, GNOME Foundation or?
Well, GNOME in general, on how the desktop works and everything. Because if you look at it, it's very similar. There's a lot of the same things seem to be happening on the Microsoft side of things too.
I don't see that as being an issue, Joe, because as a matter of fact, Windows 10 is actually stolen from Plasma in the way it looks.
Right.
So I don't think it's that Linux is copying Microsoft so much as Microsoft is trying.
No, I'm not saying
in terms of influence of direction.
I'm saying it's a collaboration. It's almost like, they're sharing ideas and they're trying to kind of, I don't know if mesh is the right word, but they're paralleling each other.
I would say the case could be made for Linux Foundation, maybe, but even that's a conspiracy thing. But if anything, it'd be coming from Red Hat itself, having that kind of like collusion, to use that kind of buzzword.
I don't see it,
but that's too strict. It's not. Yeah, I don't think.
Well, that's what I said. It might be reaching.
Yeah.
Think about it. It seemed like there was a little bit of this parallel of business model going on with how both of them are trying to have the distro versus the OS operate on different types of devices.
I think what you're actually seeing is the Microsoft feeling the competition of Linux and people wanting to use Linux, where before they didn't have to do anything. They didn't have to worry about it because they were the only thing. Well, they weren't the only thing. Mac was always there, but for the general population, they were the only thing on the block. And I think they're just on a whole, and that's the decisions that they've made, adding the Linux environments and adding all the shell stuff. I think you're seeing Microsoft pay attention to Linux.
Could you say they were feeling the heat?
They might be feeling the heat.
The one thing I'm going to say about Mac or
Linux,
Apple,
I think both sides of the equation, Linux and Windows, are feeling the shift from local-based machines to cloud-based computing that we just access through whatever interface we happen to have.
Yep.
GNOME Greeter. The GNOME Greeter, when you sign on, at least on Fedora and the cutting edge versions, they have a beautiful red carpet treatment for your online accounts, and I think that was very, insightful for them to do.
They actually have that in the KDE version too. I think that's a Fedora.
That's one thing that Peppermint has been working on for a couple of iterations now with their ICE apps.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a welcome screen though. They have
no. They just integrate it right into their system. That the web apps show up like a regular app instead of looking like they're in a browser. They just look like they're in a regular window.
But you have to do that manually one by one. What Fedora GNOME did was, if you set up with their Gmail account, your Evolution will come up as your Gmail. Your calendar app will show up. Your to-do list will come up. And it's separate apps integrating into one pipeline of your Google information seamlessly.
Yep.
And that's I think that's very insightful for them, because the desktop is becoming less, relevant with the advent of those cloud apps.
Yes.
Well, the one thing about Apple, you mentioned that, Rocco, is that was always out there for people. But the best thing that Apple did was be greedy with their price tags they put on stuff. And people don't want to spend that kind of money.
Right.
You want to get away from Microsoft. Apple's too expensive. Linux is your next choice. And I think that helped us in that sense.
Can I ask a question, though, real quick about the GNOME thing? Because I've been doing a lot of research on this. Could it be that GNOME is not for power users? GNOME is for if someone came from outer space and had to get a sit if they had to sit in front of a computer for the first time, and hey, Mr. Alien, use this computer, and then the alien's like, this doesn't make any sense, and then they're like, okay, how can we create a user interface for someone who never saw a laptop before? I think no one ever used a computer before. How can we make a user interface that's like intuitive from a humanist, like the most basic human level, and like just totally disregard any previous paradigms?
And GNOME was born.
Aliens, if we're ever invaded by aliens, we just put them on GNOME and they'll leave.
There's
Hey,
only
look.
one problem with that thought process. GNOME seem to be creating the desktop for aliens and not humans.
That's when you think of it that way, like they're not creating it for us power users who love to tinker and tweak, but just for newer people, and their ideology is like to be a little like forward thinking and just put to bed those old ways of doing things, the traditional XP paradigm influence. Then I'm like, okay, I give GNOME a lot of slack. Then it's like it's off the hook. Like you're not for us. It's not for us.
Well,
the set it and forget it cloud-based computing crowd.
Yeah, perhaps.
Yeah. I think Cinnamon pretty much covers the new user type interface.
For those who want to adopt an old way of using a computer, bottom left start, bottom right the clock, like a Windows. But GNOME is saying we don't want to be bound by, we don't want to inherit the design philosophies of Microsoft designers.
Right.
We want to go from scratch. Like, how is a human from a first time ever experience use a computer, and then hence the workflow.
I'm sorry, I love the workflow in GNOME.
Yeah, I do too. I can't make KDE do it. Like the timing is off. I can't do it in KDE.
Well, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. The GNOME desktop is when you look at it, Android works that way. Apple phones work that way. Apple iPads work that way. I mean, it's a very, very across the board type interface that people could get used to or be familiar with straight off the bat, because a lot of people are doing stuff on their phones. It could be very similar to the way you use your desktop as well, or your laptop. I mean, when you look at it.
So because of that, I've kind of like decreased my GNOME bashing a little bit, because like they're not making it for us; they're making it for like
aliens.
New aliens, yeah.
All right. On that note, we're running a little long, so we have to decide what we're going to do for a challenge this week.
Oh boy, here we go.
That was pre-decided last week.
Was it?
Last week, you guys
on Netrunner.
Talked about Netrunner.
We already talked about Netrunner, so
but we
can't
talked
do it.
about Netrunner.
Yeah, talking about it and using it are two different things.
We just did KDE though.
That's the truth.
Nah, Rocco's filled us all in on Netrunner, so
all the way up to
So-
about an hour ago.
we've established that no one will know what the settings is all
I
about.
think I'm gonna like
So
Dark One. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, Rocco. So what do you think about maybe doing? Seeing how we talked about GNOME, why not we do where GNOME's based out of Fedora?
I reckon that's a great idea.
Fedora GNOME is
Fedora for
really a
long
good
time.
implementation of GNOME.
I'll be honest. It's super fast. I'm on Fedora on my spare machine, and I was impressed about it being sluggish. It's totally not the case with Fedora's GNOME.
Okay, I have a question about that. Somebody needs to shoot me the link of the actual Fedora distribution to try, because I tried it earlier this week on a different laptop. It broke SSD on me. It locked me out. And I had to use 5 different things to finally get that SSD back.
Well, this is the reason we try these things, Frank. I mean,
So we can learn how to get them back from broken machines.
Yeah,
But I had to use Knoppix and a couple other tricks just to get the SSD back so I could use it.
yeah, but Frank, did you allow Fedora to do its own thing installation-wise?
Yes.
Yeah, there's your big mistake, because it takes every single SSD and spare hard disk you've got and goes, LVM, stitch that, you can't use any of your other disks anymore.
Yeah,
some of the issues with that.
If you do it next time, tell it where you want it to install. Don't let it do its own thing. It's a nightmare.
I still have a partition on my drive that is there from the Fedora install that no installer can do anything with.
See?
Well, here's another option. I know he said last week that he didn't want anybody to touch it, but he's also just sent out an email with regard to Lubuntu and 1810. And he said, one thing that we want to emphasize is we need testing.
Ooh.
If you have a spare computer and we need help testing every nook and cranny, from finding issues, usability, bugs, or just something that doesn't plain make sense, we want to know about it. So if you wanted an easier one, you can go Lubuntu. Or if you wanted a slightly different one, go Rosa 10.
Rosa 10 is definitely on the table for trying out. All right,
there's
so
three options.
So
Rosa,
there's three options. What do you guys all think?
Well,
I'm down for whatever.
I think Ryan would love it if we went with the Fedora.
I like pepperoni pizza.
I like pizza.
I like
Well, I
Canadian
think-
bacon pineapple pizza, but hey, you know.
Let's
I
give
like
Simon a bit of love and do Ubuntu.
That's
Yeah,
right.
that's what I was
Let's give
saying.
Simon a bit of love. Yeah, and then maybe
Do
we can,
Ubuntu.
you know, there's a few options there going forward for the following week anyway. I think.
Oh, yeah.
Idea.
Yeah, it's not like we're going to run out of weeks here.
No,
No, that's funny.
no, I think Ubuntu's a great idea.
The only question I would have for that is, would it help? I mean, I know, like I said, you mentioned, Zeb, that Simon had said wait. Would it help him by us testing it to wait, or would it help him most by us testing it this week?
Well,
Right.
as long as those people that test it agree to send him the information.
Bug reports.
There's no point in testing it, coming on here and going, oh, what a load of old, this didn't work, that was rubbish, that was rubbish, because that won't achieve anything. If we're going to do it...
Rocco, that means submitting bug reports.
No, you don't have to submit proper bug reports. Simon is more than happy for you to shout him up on the Telegram group, or even says in this email, you can email him direct with just your thoughts.
I do like yelling at Simon, so that is a good idea.
All right, you talked us into it, Zeb.
Well,
Yelling at
considering there's
Simon.
two different design paradigms there between you two.
Zeb, you talked us into it. We'll do Lubuntu.
I think
Yeah.
it's a good idea.
I think
All
it's
right,
a great idea.
Zeb, can you post a link?
Yep, 2 secs, I'll get it up.
What are they based off of?
It's the Lubuntu Nightly that you have to get.
Okay.
Yeah, the 1810 nightly, isn't it?
All right, while Zeb is posting that link, we're going to do the last word. Matt, last word.
GNOME is really not that bad.
Yes, I love it. I can't believe you said it, but I love it.
Keegan just had a heart attack.
I'm surprised he just said that. I can't believe it. Dark One.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Are you still recording, Rocco? You still
I am.
Who is this guy? And what have you done with Dark One?
Right? I think you're going to lose that tag of Dark One.
Nah, that ain't going away. I'll still bash GNOME, don't get me wrong, but
He's been body snatched.
All right, Dan, last word.
Sudo PC Man FM.
Oh, stop it. No.
Man
Sorry.
FMQT.
Oh yeah.
Rob?
Well, after tonight, very clearly, Plasma is the Linux desktop.
Nice. Agreed. Chicken?
YouTube finally gave me my my named URL, and I'm a YouTube partner now. So
Yes.
yay.
Nice.
Nice.
I'm a real
So you can post your channel in the chat if you want.
Oh, I have one of those. Yes.
tuxdigital.com/chicken.
Let's work.
You're welcome, Rocco.
Dave, last word.
As a child from the age of DOS, I'll never be able to wrap my mind around GNOME, but nice desktop, I'll just never be able to fit in it.
Now, when you say that, you're talking about GNOME 3 or GNOME in general, even including GNOME 2?
GNOME in general. I grew into computers back in the late 70s in DOS.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just how my brain works. DOS into the IBM machines.
You're a power user
So you're an i3 guy.
and not an alien.
I actually prefer Awesome to i3.
Oh, okay.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. Colin?
Sudo space CP space dash capital R space theme folder name to /user/share/theme.
Thanks, Colin. Appreciate that. Frank, last word.
Just enjoy Linux. Use it for what you want. I'm not going to come up with any more funny things tonight.
All right. Keegan?
I'm trying to develop some kind of a Star Wars distro. I'm stuck between R2D Seuss and Han Solus.
Last one's epic.
Love it. That's great.
Princess Leia Montana.
Yeah, right. Michael better get on that.
DZ.
Let's not forget Destination Linux and episode 83 that was posted just on Friday. So keep tuning in and keep enjoying it. We are definitely missing Rocco, but hopefully we're still providing you guys some entertainment.
You definitely are.
Definitely are.
Awesome.
Because it's all about Threadripper.
Threadripper.
Actually, is that Threadripper? Threadripper?
Yeah, exactly, Colin.
I was waiting for somebody else to do that. That was awesome.
All right. Joe, last word.
Ubuntu Mate for the win with Peppermint 9 as the proverbial athletic supporter secondary.
So, what was that, Joe?
Lamer?
Never going to get that image out of my mind now. Peppermint in a pair of jockey shorts with some.
That's awesome.
Lamer.
Pseudo Dolphin.
Torture.
Prophetic.
Dolphin.
Prophetic.
I'm going to be speaking at FOSCon next Saturday.
Cool.
So if you guys are
are?
coming, yeah, please come out to that, and hopefully I get recorded and get it shared out to the group.
Yeah, share that.
Congratulations.
Yep.
Nice.
Thank you.
Dan?
Well, I was able to use the KDE Neon for 6 days.
Uh-oh.
I caught this back when you guys did this challenge last week, and I caught it on the replay. I did use it. Super key didn't work. I found the menu really clunky to operate because you had to click through the menu every time you wanted to get somewhere. That was kind of annoying. And I had to pull it out to actually get on and talk with anybody with the mic because I couldn't get the mic to work in the KDE Neon. So that's my thoughts on that. And GNOME, rather use something else.
Okay. So you had a good experience on KDE Neon, all right?
It wasn't a bad distro. I did a lot of things moved in. I actually moved into it a bit. I even put Steam in it. I loaded some of my games in it. The stuff all worked. It's just it felt different, and I couldn't get my mic to work, to get on and talk to anybody.
So you're saying there's a chance.
It's a big step.
Yes,
First
wasn't
important
bad.
thing.
All the dev packages work great with it.
It's an almost maybe.
Yeah, definite maybe.
AD application menu.
All right.
Alternative.
So this week's challenge is Ubuntu, and we're going to check it out.
All right.
But for me, last word, KDE Neon for the win. Just saying.
Wow.
True.
Yeah. It's really good.
I'm rocking it now.
Right here.
All right, that's all we got for this week. We'll be back next week, and we'll talk again about Linux.
See you, everybody.
See ya.
Good night, everybody.
See you later.